folks, welcome back for another episode of Off the Grid. I wanted to welcome my next guest. He's a dope MC based out of Canada, one of our certified underground hip hop OGs, steady fixture in the game. When you talk about Canadian hip hop, you can't help but mention the brother's name. I wanted to welcome Birdapres to the show. How are you, brother? Thanks for joining me on a weekend to do this.
I'm doing great, and thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Hey, so before we go into your storied resume, we talk about all the dope albums and work that you've done. I wanted to take it back real quick and just kind of understand the past and things that have contributed in developing who you are today. And so first, I wanted to squash something real quick, man. I thought you were from the Vancouver area, but I know you're living in Toronto. Are you actually from the west coast of Canada, or where
I,
exactly?
I sure am. I'm from Vancouver originally. I was born
Okay.
there, grew up there. I'm currently living in Toronto, and I
Yep.
also spent about 10 years in Winnipeg on top of that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. You did the whole spread, man. Very dope, man. Well, hey, with that, man, I was just curious, man. What was your first exposure to music? What were your parents listening to, and what were they into?
Uh, my dad really liked Pink Floyd a lot. So I heard a lot of Pink Floyd growing up, and my mom liked Joni Mitchell. She liked Aretha Franklin. Both my parents listened to different stuff.
Awesome.
So that was early exposure. And I remember a couple pivotal things when I was a kid. Me and my mom bought a copy of Purple Rain. It was like a record we bought
Nice.
together. It was like, you could pick something. And I was like, oh, I want to get the Prince record.
Yeah.
And and I remember around the same time I started listening to independent radio. There was a station in Vancouver. The call letters were CFRO, and they played a pretty broad mix of things in the early mid '80s. So I remember that as well.
That's awesome. And at some point, you get exposed to rap music. So I'm curious how that happened.
First thing I remember was a kid at school doing the Christmas rap from Beat Street, the Cool Mo D
Yeah.
thing.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I know Rocket was probably before that, or
Oh,
am I? My timeline's a little off on it, but it was around the same time.
yeah.
And I remember those two things being really pivotal for me. Um, and especially with the Christmas rap, because I hadn't seen Beat Street, so it was like, is this guy's rhyme, or like, is this something I should know?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I remember just being like interested in that. And then just around that time, it was probably 1984,
Yeah.
80, I remember 83, 84. I was 7, 8, 9 years old, in that era of time. So I was a pretty young kid, but I have these distinct memories of like somebody bringing a boombox to school, or
Yeah.
you know, uh, going to like a breakdancing class, or like these sorts of things. That's what they referred to it then, like
Yeah.
a beat class. And these kind of things just influencing me subtly and not really thinking much about them. And also another thing, like for me, at the time, I just remember it being like a really like a neighborhood community kind of thing. Like a lot of people, like a lot of young kids were really into this stuff. So it was all around me.
Yeah, that's interesting too. And it was and I don't think I made the connection too between like breakdancing and rapping, but those were kind of the two primary things in the 80s when I was growing up as well. And
Yeah.
so yeah, what was it? Was it the rapping first or breakdancing? Do you recall that attracted you to culture just all at once, probably, huh?
I think it was a bit, I mean, it was graffiti too. The breaking
Yeah.
was like you know an obvious sort of physical thing that everybody was drawn towards, but it all kind of came kind of at once. Like
Yeah.
the other thing is being on the west coast. I mean, Vancouver is so far north from California, but there was a weird crossover thing where stuff would show up maybe a little early or something. So there was a lot of
Right.
electro music around, a lot of freak beat kind of stuff. I remember that.
Yeah, interesting time too. And you would think that there would be no delay in getting the music from from the US to Canada, but I mean, yeah, I mean
Maybe
you
a
get
little, like, maybe a month or two,
yeah,
right?
but it was same exposure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have the fortune of that. I grew up overseas, so I think it was a little bit delayed. But that's really cool, man. That it bled over as much as it did, and now obviously it's a global thing. But super cool, man. And so obviously you become a fan of the music first, and so I'm sure you started digging into it. And do you remember some of your favorite rappers in the '80s, early '90s? Those who kind of influenced you to do what you did in terms of
The
MCing?
biggest, the biggest things I can remember, the earliest thing was I mean, it was Run DMC,
Mm-hmm.
who I definitely liked Run DMC.
Yeah.
But the artist I always think of who was really pivotal was LL Cool J.
Oh, nice.
When he came out, we didn't know, we don't know much. It's like you got a tape cover or something, or like you listen to the lyrics, you hear something. But I was
Yeah.
like, we're like, "Yeah, this dude's really like he's like a teenager or something. He's like a young dude. Like a lot of rappers at that point, like, I'm just trying to think of some examples like Melly Mel or
Curtis
somebody like
Blow. Yeah.
Curtis Blow. They seem like an older sort of established like adults, and
That's
LL like a kid to us. So we were like,
that's a
and
great
this is
point.
I'm thinking like probably 87.
Yeah. Yeah, hey, that's a great point. I've never heard anyone explain it like that, but yeah, maybe they tie to him more because he was
Yeah,
relatively closer in age, right?
young, and it was like, oh, you could, this isn't something you got to be a grown up to do. It seemed that way, like, and I'm at the time like 87, I'm 12. So, it's like a lot of stuff seemed really far off. And I know, like, I grew up in a neighborhood called East Van, um, and later moved to Vancouver Island to Victoria for a bit and back and forth and here and there. But um, yeah, I remember hearing that stuff, and like, it was kind of blending with like New Edition and
Yeah.
like R&B stuff, but it was all around. And the 80s was a little different. Like there was like freestyle music, but I
Yeah.
remember very distinctly when 89, I'd say 88 to 89 hit, it
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
changed where you were like, it was like, okay, no, I'm just a hardcore hip hop head. And that's when the shift started to happen. Because before that, it was like you're just soaking up everything. And then you just got
Right.
really, right? At least for me.
No, no, that's a great point, man. You mentioned freestyle too, which I haven't talked to anybody about, but the New Edition, and then even to the '90s, still that still was bleeding into it for me. That mix of R&B and hip hop. I don't know if you remember groups like Another Bad Creation.
Oh, of
Oh
course, man.
God,
Yeah,
like I
totally.
love that
Yeah,
stuff.
no doubt, no doubt. Belle Biv DeVoe and
Yeah,
the I'm
first
trying to think
TLC
of
album was
100%. And there's things like I
yeah,
feel like it was like a later incarnation where it was more like it was like, okay, we're gonna have hip hop beats and sing over it. Whereas before that, it was more like it was a little more loose, right? Like it was
yeah,
and I'm not, I'm not a historian or anything, but I assume it
right,
kind of started with Belle Biv DeVoe, where they were more like, okay, they were in the b-boy stance with the,
right,
you know, Bomb Squad production and everything, and it was a little bit more like, oh, this is like a hip hop group, but it's an R&B group, right?
yeah,
Um, and
yeah. No,
before that,
that's
it was more like Jody Watley with Rakim on the song or something, it was like this
right.
shift. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why, and you grew up at that time, and so I'm one of those guys that love the R&B hip hop mix. I mean, I don't do that kind of that much music like that, but I love that mix, man. It just takes me back to those days. So that's great that kind of just resurface it from me, man. That's awesome.
Right
Yeah.
on.
Well, hey, so hey, you become a bigger fan and you start to appreciate the culture even more. And at some point, you dabble with writing. And so, do you recall the catalyst in what made you pick up the pencil and start writing raps?
I used to write rhymes for my friends,
Huh.
and you say it, I don't want to say it. Here's a rhyme for you. And that's how I started. And my friend was really um my friend Claudio, he was really insistent that we is like, oh, we got to form a group. And I'm like, no, I'll just write these rhymes. You go ahead, you do the rhymes. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't like the sound of my voice. I was like, I don't like how I sound on the record, on the cassette, you know. And then we had a tape deck, and I remember my DJ RKV, who we met probably 1990, 89, 90, and he became my DJ like within a year or so of
Yeah.
that. And he had like two Sony turntables, you know, with I remember he made slip mats out of paper towels,
Yeah. Nice.
and we had a pyramid mixer, and that was sort of like the catalyst starting point. And Claudio, and there was like a couple of guys we were working with, like trying to get something going, and it never really came together. And then it sort of fizzled, and he started DJing for a couple other groups.
Okay.
Uh and that was about the time like I was starting to write, we'll call it more seriously, but just like I'm still a kid, I'm still just writing.
And how did that influence your fashion too? Did that we're still quite young, and so I mean, our parents are still buying us clothes, but did that changed your fashion a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean it's a funny thing because I can remember seeing somebody in a magazine wearing Timberlands and or like a Timberland sweatshirt in
Yeah.
like, oh, man, it must have been 91. It was really early. They weren't like everywhere at this point. And I was just like, Timberland. And I remember going and getting, like, I'd searched everywhere and I finally found this like weird, like old people hiking store that had a, like, Canada's, things show up in Canada, but they sometimes they're slow, or like I said, they're in weird places. So I
Yeah.
I remember very distinctly being the only person I knew had a pair of Tims, and just
Nice.
like really like, and it's like probably like August in Vancouver. It's like not Timberland weather, but I'm like, I got them.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and things like that. I used to definitely like, I remember one day, like we used to go to thrift stores a lot, and I remember one day I scored this. It was like a terry cloth bucket hat that said Rolex. It was white and it had a green. It had the Rolex logo on the front, and I was like,
Nice.
"Oh, this is the ill shit." I was very hyped on.
Oh man, yeah, it's funny you mentioned Timberlands too, and I remember the search trying to get a pair of Timberlands, and the best I could do was find a pair of Payless boots that looked exactly like them.
Yeah, the knockoff joints, right? It was
Yeah.
hard, and they were not cheap. That was the other thing; they were expensive,
Oh, I know. Yeah.
and it was funny, especially because it was some like, it wasn't like, I mean, it's so different now. The world is so different, but like back then, you would just be like if it wasn't something every store was importing at a deep discount, where they had some sort of volume buy,
Right.
the shoes would be like, twice as much as they should be or whatever, where you're
Right.
have to buy these. And inflation and all that, the way things are in the world now is one thing, but like back then it was like, no, this is gonna hurt me.
Yeah.
Like I gotta deliver a lot of newspapers to get those.
Right. Yeah, and so hey, awesome, man. So you get you dive into it a little bit, and you start doing it a little more. Was there any other influence too? Did you end up dabbling in any other element of hip hop, graffiti DJing, or
I
breakdancing,
mean,
or is it
I probably the first time I wrote on a wall was 87. I'm sure the statute of limitations is up on that. I was not,
right?
I did not have really
Yeah.
tight hand style. I'm still a little sloppy. I would never, you know, anything other than just giving it a shot. That's as far as I went with graffiti. I play records. I don't consider myself a DJ because I think that's a comes with a technical skill set.
Sure.
Personally, I respect the form, but I know a lot of music and I like playing old records for people, so we'll
Yeah.
we'll go that far. But it was mostly emceeing, not much of a dancer.
That's why I stuck with MCing too. So I feel you, man. No, hey, so you kind of like figured out your path and you went that way. And do you recall the first time that you performed and got on stage and how was that experience like?
Yeah, there was a couple things. It was a build up because
Yes.
I remember I wouldn't rap. I would just rap with my friends in like, you know, whatever, somebody's living room or something. I was like, I'm not going out there. I'm not doing it even in the schoolyard.
Yeah.
And oh, I did. I beatboxed a little. I remember beatboxing for like my friend who was rhyming.
Nice.
You know, outside of school one day. That was 1990, 89, 90.
Okay.
Um, but I was really trying to develop something. I remember just sitting there and writing and writing and writing and practicing. But the thing about that is without actual, on the floor experience on stage or, in a cipher or something, you're kind of clunky, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
you got to wear those rough edges off. So I started, and I just remember distinctively this kid in my neighborhood just like pointing at me. He's like, "You rap," and he like made like a microphone, mimed a microphone. He pointed at me. He's like, "You rap." I was like, "Oh my god!" I feel, it was kind of embarrassing. But then I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I do. And I started just working with a bunch of different people, like uh a big like somebody I met Mocha only, as he's now known, in
Yeah.
probably 1991.
Okay.
And my DJ had started DJing for him in Prevail, later of Swollen Members.
Yeah.
So they would come to his house to rehearse, and I met him around then, and they had a show. And so we started hanging out a bit, and we went over to, they had another DJ, and he had borrowed RKB, my DJ's mixer, which was really my mixer, but I just pretty much let him have it.
Yeah, sure.
Kid ended up with it on the island, and he didn't give it back. So we were like, oh, we're going to go get the mixer. And so we went to Victoria to get the mixer.
Yeah.
This dude's block, and he was very surprised to see us, and he gave it to us. Um, but then we were hanging out, and I just remember Mocha being like, we're gonna freestyle. Like, can you freestyle? And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like rhyme off the top of your head. And I'm like, and I think I got like maybe a line or two out, and I was just
Yeah.
like, we sputtered out. And I'm like, oh my God, this is another level.
Yeah.
And so that was about the point where I started to get a little bit more um, you know, serious about it. And then I actually ended up, shortly after that, ended up moving to Victoria, BC, which is a couple hours away from Vancouver,
Okay.
uh, on an island. Um, and in the scene there was just, it was like this kind of brief moment where everything came together, and a bunch of people were out there at that time. This is probably 92 to 94. And, man, we would be at like, you know, some water fountain outside rhyming, or like the mall. I remember there used to be there was uh, I guess like a naval base there. So there'd be ships would come in, and we used to battle like American sailors at the
That's
mall.
awesome.
Yeah, and it like really, really changed you know,
Yeah.
the, it was like a different kind of experience. I don't think I would have had at home. Um, and when I moved back a couple years later to go to community college in Vancouver, I was like, you know, kind of more ready.
Let me peel back on a couple of things that you mentioned. So, one, I didn't realize Mocha Only was from the West Coast too, but you guys crossed paths during the early stages of his career too. Is that
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
we were acquainted. We met, as I said, through
Yeah.
DJ.
That's wild.
Um, and he was yeah, I mean, was, will be is just a dynamo, man. He was like,
Yeah.
what a character, man. Just incredible MC.
Yeah.
Um, and Prevail also, like those two guys were like they would just freestyle for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
Uh
No, it's wild that just that meeting by chance shaped you know you your development as an MC, and then got you to start thinking about freestyling more and just expanding your toolkit. And so that's super wild, man. And got into just performing in all these different spots, or I'm sorry, freestyling, and just getting more exposure, right now, practicing your performance game. And yeah, that's really cool, man. And so you spent most of your time on the West Coast. At some point, was the move across the country to Winnipeg first, and then
First thing I did was I moved to Toronto in the
oh, okay,
90s for a brief, it was like for a brief spell. I came out here because we sort of skipped ahead. I was in a group called RTA, running Asylum, and it was sort of an umbrella situation. It was me and a guy named Che Imperial, who was a producer and DJ, and RKV, and then we had a bunch of our friends around, so different other MCs in the region, and we did a 12-inch single in 1996. Um, and then that situation kind of fizzled out. And then me and RKV kept going, and we did another record about a year later.
okay,
And at that time, I felt like it wasn't getting, like I'd sort of pushed it as far as I could. And I was like, I need to go somewhere and do stuff somewhere else. So I went to Toronto. I ended up moving to Toronto
right,
for, 6 months to a year, and connected with a lot of different people out there, like Cryptic Souls and Han Solo Records and
oh
different
yeah,
a
sure,
lot of the I met a lot of the Halifax guys um when I was there, as well as the pop group Len, who did the song Steal My Sunshine.
yeah,
They had
oh
a
crazy,
situation at the house where everybody would congregate there on the weekend, and basically just drink and hang out, but like work on songs or stuff. What was going
yes.
on there? A guy named Fritz the Cat, who did In Search of Divine Styler magazine. He was around. There was a lot happening in that thing. So I sort of came out and you know, put my 12-inch single, my record in a bunch of people's hands, and then ended up going back to Vancouver
Okay,
uh, at a certain point. But that was sort of the start, because I've been in Toronto now for, I guess, about 8 years
okay,
from, but that was the first thing. And then I moved back to Van and did a bunch more stuff in Vancouver,
nice.
before moving to Winnipeg. So that would take us up to, I don't know, probably 98, 99 ish.
Yeah, and so at some point, then you joined the Peanuts and Corn roster, and is that about that time, 98, 99? That would make
99 ish.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was I met DJ Moves,
Yep.
um, through the and began we did a song. I think I was out visiting Toronto, and we recorded a song called Bird Is
Okay.
for an album called Alleged Legends, but the album didn't exist at that point. We just did this one song.
Sure.
And then I came back, and we were planning on doing it as a cassette tape, and I guess Moves played it for McEnroe
Yep.
from Porn Records, and he really liked it. Never really done anything at the time on his label that he, as far as I know, that he hadn't produced. So it was a first for him, I think, with Alleged Legends. Um, because we'd recorded a bunch. Sorry, I sort of skipped ahead there. We recorded a bunch more songs in Vancouver. Moves ended up moving to Vancouver, um, and we just worked on this record. Uh, and Roddy'd heard it, McEnroe had heard it,
Right.
and I remember it was a funny thing. I was like hanging out on in Vancouver is like Robson and Thurlow, this cross street downtown, and like all these different people would come through randomly, and you just see them. And I remember meeting them, and like I gave them, I'd done this sort of, one off, like straight to cassette local thing called Bird Reynolds.
Oh
And
yeah.
I gave him a copy. I was like, oh, here, you check this out. And I guess he liked Alleged Legends better. So he's like, oh, I want to put this out on CD. And it was like, whoa, you want to do a CD? Like this was
Yeah.
like, we were very like analog,
Yeah.
like cassette tapes and vinyl. And that was a first. So I was into that. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then
Yeah.
that's how I started working with them.
Okay. Was there an official invite to become a part of that label, or was it just, hey, we're gonna put this out and then just kind
It
of like
was a
transition?
one-off. And
Yeah.
then I just kept McEnroe would be working on a project, and he'd just be like, hey, do you want to do a verse on this?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, sure. And he's like, oh, well, we're recording today or tomorrow or whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. He's like, so you sure you could do it? I'm like, yeah, I could do it. And I would write the verse on the bus or the Sky Train,
Yeah.
uh, on my way to his place to record. And when he saw, and then I just deliver it, a take or two. And I think it just kind of like my ability to do that just kind of blew him away. So he was like, oh, do you want to come back and do another one? I'm like,
Yeah.
sure. And then I just kept recording stuff with them. And then it turned into like more projects from there.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. And I mean, Peanuts and Corn roster, you guys got a cool bunch of folks as a part of that collective. John Smith, Pipskid, McEnroe, you mentioned DJ Moves, Honeycutt, Gruff, man, the list goes on, man. And how was that just working with those folks on the label, or did you guys not run into each other too much? Was there a lot of interaction and touring with those guys too as well?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think at first it was mostly me and Roddy, me and
Hmm.
Mac work on stuff. And then other people would come in from out of town because he was living in Vancouver at the time.
Okay.
And most of the artists on his label were in Winnipeg.
Ah,
So they
okay.
would come to town to record, and then we'd
Gotcha.
hang out. And then we went on tour. I'm trying to remember the exact thing, but I know me, McEnroe, and DJ Honeycutt went on a tour, and at some point, Pipskid from the label was like,
Yeah.
they're gonna want to stay in Winnipeg for 2 weeks or whatever it was, some outrageous amount of time in my mind. And he was like, you can have my apartment. I'm out of town. I'm on the road too. So I was like, okay, cool. So I stayed at his apartment. And at some point I was like, hey, uh, that's crazy. You got this place. Like, he told me what he paid for it, and it was like about a third or less of what rent in Vancouver was.
Right.
And I was like, man, that's really reasonable. And I wanted to be doing music more
Yeah.
and rely on a 9 to 5, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, oh, I should maybe move to Winnipeg for a little bit. And then that
Ah,
little into a very long time.
wow. Man,
Yeah.
and did you become quite active then? You recorded a bunch of music in that period.
Yeah.
That I was introduced to your music in 2001 on a hip hop compilation album that I featured on too, with Hip Hop Infinity, Fishing in Troubled Waters. I don't know
Right
if
on.
you remember that.
Of course I
So,
do.
yeah,
Shout
yeah. So you
out
had
to
that.
Hip Hop Infinity.
Yeah, crazy, right? That was kind of like the platform back in the day, and um,
100%.
yeah, a lot of people came out from that website and just did some amazing music. And so you had that One More Tomorrow record with McEnroe. That was pretty cool. Do you recall how that song got on that album and the story behind that? Or did Mac take care of all that?
He probably took care of it. He was very I to this day I don't know the details of a lot of what he was up to, but I know he was like doing a lot of different things with different websites or labels. I think at one point he was distributing a lot of Fat Beats stuff in Canada, like
Sure.
CD through the different channels. So there was a lot of connections there that I didn't really know much about. But whenever he was like, "Hey, do you want to do a verse for
Yeah,
this?" I was just, "Oh
I'm
man."
in. You a great straightaway started doing a lot of music in Winnipeg, and eventually I would go on to listen to your Get It Done album from 2006, 12 tracks of just mad raw hip hop. Saw that it was released through Rec Room, Fontana, Universal. Any special stories behind the making of that album or what you were going through? And can you talk
That
to me
that's
about
a,
that?
yeah, that's a story because that's when I left Winnipeg. That was right when it happened when we were working on that. And it was like because we'd done Nothing Is Cool, which was I think pretty widely critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
Uh, for an underground Canadian thing. It was like in the, Village Voice and different things that reviewed it. And things kind of slowed down in Vancouver, and I wasn't really very comfortable with it at the time. And I remember we were working on that record. We sort of started it, and I was like, "Hey, I think I'm going to move to Winnipeg." And I remember McEnroe being like, "You sure you want to do that?"
Right. Right.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to do this." And we'd started, and we had a couple songs, and we had a couple songs, and then at a certain point, I was like, "Man, I'm leaving in like a month and a half. Like, we got to get this shit finished."
Oh.
And
Uh-huh.
so the pace just sped up, and I just remember writing like every day
Oh man.
and recording all the time, and we somehow got it. The name of the record was Get It Done. That was the point of the,
I see.
you have to actually get this done.
Yeah.
And so we got it recorded, and then I went to Winnipeg, and I came back to shoot. There was a video for Do That Dance, which I came back to Vancouver to shoot, but I was already living in Winnipeg
Yeah.
at that point. The record came out, and I was living in Winnipeg.
Were they all your friends or just hey, you went to dancing school and say, hey, come dance?
Well, the whole project I think was conceived by McEnroe
Okay.
and our friend Jeff Herrera, who
Okay.
did Jebrox. He did um sort of some label stuff and road managing, etc.
Yeah.
Um, uh, really awesome role in all of that. But between him and McEnroe, they pulled everyone together. But it was a lot of people that I was familiar with or knew from the scene that showed up for the video, which was just it was so much fun. It
It
was like
was
one of the yeah.
yeah, oh man, it was really fun and just the everything you mentioned, just all the dances as you mentioned them. I'm like, oh man, this is great. I remember the good times and there comes a when you're doing rap, the braggadocio attitude, and hey, this will work out just fine as long as you
Yeah.
do one thing right.
Yeah, yeah,
Every,
yeah.
everything I say, and it was just a fun song, man. And I imagine that to be a good party rocker show to song to perform on
It
stage,
was
man. Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you something. It was really great. There's a couple of things about the song. One of them, it was kind of a joke because I picked a slower beat that I was like, this is actually going to be kind of hard to dance to. So I was like, it
Uh,
was you know, my slightly off kilter sense of humor. Uh, so on top of that, it's a very hard song to remember the words to because everything is do the this, do the that,
yeah.
do the this, do that. So you got to be like really cognizant of the order and doing
Yeah,
it
that's
live.
true.
A lot of times I'd be like, oh man, I have no idea where I am in the song. And the worst thing was DJ Honeycutt at some point, we were on the road, he would stop it and make me restart the song from the beginning. He's like, you have to get through
At a
this
show or
at a show live.
oh
It was like
damn.
it was like torture. I'm like, you got to be joking.
Yeah,
Like I'm
yeah,
so embarrassed right now for starters, but then also I have to get
yeah.
through this whole song. And props to him for being I guess the James Brown of peanuts and corn.
Yeah, you're right, man. I guess when you mentioned that, you talked about electric slide, cha cha, and I could see
Yeah.
how it gets confusing and they bleed
Very,
and That's wild that you had that he stopped. He's like, hey, you perform the
Yeah.
song again. Holy shit.
And you just be like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's like, okay, back to the beginning. And I feel
Yeah.
it was so awkward, but so funny. And I'm sure it was like, the audience was probably dying. I'm sure it was great.
No, that's
Um,
great. And there was three counterpoints to that too that yeah that you mentioned too, right? So one saw it as a fun song, but I like the braggadocio attitude in the beginning, and then kind of the maybe it was the chorus, right? When you're like fun song, and, if they want to battle, then let them go at it. And I thought that was cool. And then you mentioned your just off kilt sense of humor where you kind of picked a difficult beat to begin with. So it just made for the perfect recipe, and that was definitely one of my favorite songs from the album.
right on, man. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think ultimately though my and I'll talk about a couple of favorite songs, but I think my favorite song was the self-titled track "Get It Done," the first
Yeah.
song on the album. Just man, I just over the years I really appreciate your writing ability. So man, this first track, I'm a dude about the lyrics. I got drive and ambition. Girl, what's missing? Real love and funds are insufficient. I down gin with juice mixed in it. It'll be the same when check the six digits. Put my songs on the OC so chicks dig it. Get low till they bury me carried by six midgets. Man, it's just great, great and fun, man. So yeah, and I appreciate it even more now that I know the story behind it. That you guys were just trying to get the record
You were
done.
really trying to get
Yeah,
the record clean.
yeah. So yeah, really cool. And some great features too. You alluded earlier to your relationship with Mocha Only, who
Yeah.
features on the album too as well. And so was that just a simple, hey, hop on the album, man, and or did you have to come down and record it in the studio with you? How did that go down?
He was on the record, and was I must have been there. It's a little hazy, but we've done a lot of songs. I mean, I was on his last Martian Christmas album.
Yeah,
He's been on a number of my records over the years. I think, trying to think, but yeah, he was no, he's always that's the homie, man. He
yeah.
looks out. Sure.
No, that's great, man. It's always good, when you think about Canadian hip hop and all the different pockets in Winnipeg, Vancouver, and Toronto, and then that you guys all intermix some way, or you guys know each other. It's quite. I mean, it's big spread, big country, but small world when you look at it like the musical network. So that's cool, man. I love hearing these stories about how they shaped you, or how you knew each other back in the day. It's great.
Right on, man.
Yeah, and just a couple other songs I wanted to mention just to show some love. Again, "Harsh Words" was a great one for me. Enjoyed that song a lot. And I quote that stuff for days. And I'll mention it too because we talked about Timberland boots, but the show will take place on your face for talking. Dog, these Timberland boots were made for walking. And so shout out to the official official shoe
Official
sponsor.
footwear.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If
I
you,
think I still have a pair. I'm pretty sure I still have at least one pair of Timberlands. I always have one.
I
Um,
absolutely have a pair too in the garage.
as I get older, I'm less and less brand focused, but I generally have a pair of Timberlands.
Oh, that's great, man. And then your beef, man, closer to the end of the album, your beef does not concern me was another song that I enjoyed. So great album, just one of my favorites that you've done, and awesome. Very honored that I got the opportunity to speak with you about that project. Did you guys end up putting out hard copies?
Yeah, CD, Get It Done came out on CD through, as you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
Fontana Universal.
Yep.
Uh, probably my only major label distributed release that I can
Yeah.
think of off the top of my head. Been pretty underground throughout, before and after. Um, but uh, but yeah, that was quite a time, man. And then I think
Sure.
me and John Smith hit the road around then, did a bunch of shows, um, through Canada anyway. Um,
Yeah.
Never really played too much outside of Canada.
Okay.
Um, did a couple things here and there. South by Southwest one time.
Yeah. Texas.
Yeah, performed in Los Angeles once. And then I think that might be it, to be honest. um,
for that album.
for forever.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I've been all over, but as far as doing shows, like I think those are
Yeah.
maybe one or two more.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, your music hit globally, man. So, it's awesome, man. Just the power of being able to spread your music all over the place digitally,
Yes,
man. Super, super cool, amazing. Well, good, man. Hey, and list goes on, man. You get song after song, record after record. Just I could go on, but man, I love to also just talk about you outside of music too. And I asked you, what you like to do for fun on your free time. You mentioned that you're a big collector of music too. And is
yeah.
that all different types, CDs, tapes, and vinyl, or just vinyl?
I have these in 8 tracks and all
Oh
sorts of, I
shit!
have all kinds of formats, but I only really over the years have focused on records, which has obviously had a direct connection to hip hop. But
Yeah.
I worked at record shops. I
Ah, nice.
have a little, the Record Nest as a company, with some friends as well. Uh, but personally, it's just what I resonate the most with
Yeah.
is the vinyl.
Hey, talk to me about some of your prized possessions. So I'm a bit of a collector as well, and I got a couple pieces that I hold very dearly to my heart, man. Any stick out to you?
I
Just some of
don't
your
have anything handy because I would like to show them, but they're across town right now.
yeah.
Uh, but I have a Ultramagnetic MC's
Oh,
tour vinyl that it says on it property of Mo Love and TR Love, and they TR wrote all over it.
oh
Um,
man.
was from they were using it in live shows, and I remember a friend of mine asked me. He said you should post that on Instagram. This is years ago now.
Yeah, yeah.
Did and I guess somebody tagged TR Love in it, and he said it was his record and that it was. I haven't been able to figure out what it is, but it's some kind of special pressing, and he said only a few people have it.
Ah,
Uh,
super cool. Where'd you find it? In a
Funny
used
enough,
bin?
I found it on eBay in Germany, and it wasn't advertised as being that. It was just advertised as a beat up copy.
Yeah,
So it was cheap. I
right.
think it was like $20 or something. And I was just like, okay, I'll take that. Because you could see in the pictures, I could see it. And I was like, I know what that is. And so I bought it. But on another note, I did find another one of my prized possessions at a garage sale.
Oh
And
shit, that's the
it's
best.
the greatest thing is garage sales.
Yeah,
Um, it's a it's a copy of the first Earth, Wind, and Fire record, and
nice.
somebody wrote on it Dynamite Disco Whiz. And again, Disco Whiz confirmed this. It is his copy of the record. He's known as the first Latino DJ in hip hop.
That is crazy.
So those are two of my, and I have other things that are not records like old, I've got an old Boogie Down Productions flyer from 1989. I've got a bunch of stuff that's like very near
Yeah.
and dear. But those are probably my two main things.
Yeah, hey, I can appreciate that, man. So that's pretty cool. And you mentioned too, you like to do a little bit of low impact bird watching. And I meant to ask you earlier where the name Birdapres came from. Is it for
Yeah,
your
we
love
should
of bird
get
watching?
into that.
Yeah,
So what it's not a joke, but what it is me. I got a dog, and we go for walks by the lake here
right.
in on the edge of Toronto, and there's a lot of wildlife. It's not just birds, but there is a
Yeah,
lot of birds in here. So you'll see like unusual ducks or like owls or
right.
different. And it's like so we're always going to. I just find it like a kind of relaxing, kind of interesting thing to do is just when we go for a walk to look for different. Like I'm not out there with like the glasses and the
Right, right. The
yeah, but
binoculars.
I'm like, oh, crazy. That's this. Like, there's this kind of bird out here. We see like cormorants and different things. And also like coyotes. And it's interesting because Toronto's like, obviously, it's a huge metropolis, but
Yeah.
the section that I'm in is, it's by the lake and there's a little bit of wilderness close by. So you get different things come here, like a fox or something might show up. So,
Sure.
yeah, but I'll tell you that story. So,
Yeah, yeah.
in high school, I was I was hanging out. It was me and RKV, my DJ, and a couple of our friends. And there was this kid named Chung Su, and I haven't seen him in years, but he gave me my name because
Oh,
remember I gelled my hair back, and I can't remember. We are going to like a house party or something, and so I was like, I had my like silk shirt on and my hair gelled back. This is, I don't know, 80, 89, 90, somewhere around there. And my hair just popped up, like it didn't stay down, and it came up. And he pointed at me and he started laughing and he said, "You look like Big Bird."
oh damn.
Everybody, it was like he kind of snapped on me, and everybody in the car started laughing. And then from then on, everybody called me Big Bird, but I couldn't use that obviously as a name. So
Yeah.
I was going by Bird for a long time. And then I found out there was a guy in the West Coast who worked with, I think it was with Rascas, Western Hemisphere. There was a guy named Bird. So I was like, oh, there's somebody named Bird. So I got to come up with something else.
Yeah.
And at the time, we were all, there's a lot of graffiti kids in the mix, and everybody had these like, numbers at the end of their name, KRS-One style, or like,
Right.
you know, different people would be like, oh, I'm this, I'm Zen 26, or I'm this, or I'm that. And I was like, and I remember this is because, again, Mocha Only, that's when he became Mocha Only, and Prevail from Swollen Members became Prevail Wonder.
Yep.
And it was like, we were all trying to like be slicker with the names. And I'm like, I'm just going to
That's right.
go outlandish. And I'm going to say it's Bird of Prey, but it's Bird à Prey, which is French for after. So,
That's right.
my overthinking, probably a little bit weeded at the time brain was like, I'm going to, I'm going to flip this even harder, to the point where it's like nobody even knows what the hell I'm talking about. But I
Yeah.
was like, I'm after the numbers. So you could number yourself whatever number, and
Got
I'm
it.
on. Yeah.
Oh man, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So I didn't know that. It's great you explained to folks trying to be slicker with the, flipping the one, right? I see now
Yeah.
only and
Yeah.
Prevail Wonder, right? Ah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. And I was pretty sure that there was a French influence to it, as you mentioned.
Yeah. My own, like, my given last name is French, even though
Ah,
I'm not technically French.
yeah,
Yeah, I have a French last name. So it was like based on that too.
yeah. But then after all the numbers, it's me, right?
Yeah.
Birdapres. Oh, brilliant, man! I love it. Well, hey man, hey, thanks for sharing that and just doing a deep dive into some of my favorite records that you put out. I like to close the interview out with just some fun, lighthearted questions, and then we'll wrap it up, man. I appreciate your time. So let me shoot through these questions real quick. All right,
Yes, sir.
who is someone famous people say you look like?
I've heard I look like Zach Galifianakis.
From I can't
Yeah,
remember the thing. Yeah, the
between two turns. I don't think that's true, but people have said that.
okay, all right. If you had to eat one food daily for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, you're killing me. I don't know that I could do that. What one food, like the same dish over and over again, or regional?
Yep. Yeah.
One
Oh,
thing, the same dish.
yep. That would hurt me too, man.
I mean, I've gone long stretches of time where I ate like chickpeas, rice, and a vegetable.
Uh-huh.
Like that would be the most I've eaten, but I don't necessarily know I want to eat that every
For the
day.
rest of your life, right?
That's
Right.
really hard because it's like if you said like regional, I just be like, oh, Thai food or something.
All right.
Yeah, but if it's like one actual food, that's harder. You know what? I could probably eat some form of fried rice for the rest of my life.
Got it, man. It's
That's
gotta
the
mix
only
it.
thing I can think of because it's like you could kind of mix it up a little.
That's right.
I guess pizza, you can make different kinds of pizza, but I would get so sick of that.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
for sure. Or scrape the top off or something.
yeah,
But no, that's good. All right. Hey, if you could start a rumor about yourself, what would it be?
uh, that I am secretly the leader of an unknown country.
I like it, man. All right, a few more for you. Have you ever had a paranormal, unexplainable experience?
Uh, a few.
Ah, share one real quick.
Uh, I saw I saw I saw a Sasquatch one.
Really? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Well, Winnipeg area, I assume.
No, in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh,
I mean, it might have been a bear, but it was standing on its hind legs, and it was a little too
yeah, more human-like.
more human-like, and it was walking up the side of a hill.
That's crazy, man. Holy cow. All right, man. Hey, as a Canadian, I love to ask this question to all you folks from Canada. Is it a crime to enjoy poutine from McDonald's? Does that take away from the true
You
form of
know what?
poutine?
If it makes you happy, man, I'm very much of the if it makes you happy, enjoy it.
Yeah,
I'm not a big, I don't eat a lot of poutine for a variety of reasons I won't get into,
yeah,
you know what? If you like it, yeah,
yeah,
go nuts.
yeah.
If you don't like it, don't eat it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm not saying I would eat it, but hey, you know,
Life
if it
short.
cheers you up, if it makes your day better, like go nuts on the McDonald's poutine, man.
I love it, man. Great answer, man. And final fun question, man. Have you ever had a celebrity crush, and who was it?
Celebrity crush. That's a tough one. Because it's like very, it seems very specific.
Oh, and certain stages of your life too, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I swear this is true. I can't confirm it, but I think I was standing in the magazine rack one time looking at, the source or something, and I looked over and I'm pretty sure Salma Hayek was standing there. Um, and yeah, that's probably as close as I could think.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, hey, man, it was an honor to speak with you. Thank you for the opportunity to share your story. Again, man, just an amazing body of work, man. And I love what you have done, contributed to the culture, man. Your music lives on and you continue to still contribute to the game. Are there any special projects that you want to tell folks about? I know you're starting to do a small run of shows. October 11, you got something going on in Winnipeg. Anything you want to mention?
Yeah, definitely. I'm doing a bunch of shows across Canada. So
Yep.
I'll be playing Toronto October 4th. I'll be playing Winnipeg October 11th. I'll be playing Saskatoon October 12th.
Nice.
And then I'll also be playing Roberts Creek, Powell River, which is the Sunshine Coast, and in Victoria, confirmed so far. And then yeah, and I'm working on an album with Catalyst,
Nice.
aka Alex Johnson, which should be done soon. And also me and my friend Jewel One from the early, he did some of my first music in Victoria.
Okay.
We've been working on something called 12-inch rulers, which is something we started in the earlier 90s and
Okay.
just it fizzled out and was never finished. So we rekindled it a couple of years ago, and we're just trying to get this um sort of capture the spirit of it and release that within the next year. So there's probably 5 or 6 songs done on that as well. So both of those projects, and they're both at least halfway finished at this point. So they should be out within the year.
Very exciting, man. Well, again, hey, amazing time with you. Thank you again. Any final words before we close this amazing interview out?
Well, I mean, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And you really dove into some stuff that I hadn't thought about in a while. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely check out. I mean, there's a few other things in the catalog like that I've done, like the Foolish Immortals record with Jeff
Right.
Speck, Double Nice with Buck 65, which was
Mhm.
a couple years ago. And I'm also working on a few things with McEnroe, which
Awesome.
yeah,
Good.
should see the light of day.
Very cool, man. Well, hey, take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I look forward to sharing this interview.
Yeah, right on, man. Thank you. Appreciate it.